Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today I want to start by telling you about a new dynamic I'd like to introduce to the channel. It's a story I've been writing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Tell me what you think, and if you'd like more chapters about it. What would you do if one day you woke up and discovered that all the creatures from movies, books, and urban legends were real? Vampires, werewolves, dark gods, demons, even the anomalies from the SCP Foundation. The world you once knew has collapsed into a nightmare of chaos, and humanity is no longer the dominant species. Ian, a horror and sci-fi fanatic, never imagined that his knowledge of monsters would be the only thing keeping him alive. With a journal in hand, he documents everything he knows, everything he learns, and every terrifying encounter that tests his wit and resilience. Since the first day of the collapse, his only mission has been to survive, understand this new world, and find out if there's a way to reverse it. Welcome to Ian's Journal, The Awakening of Nightmares. Day 1. The End of Fiction. I don't know exactly how to explain this. If you're reading this, it means that maybe someone out there is still alive, someone who can still understand what happened. Or perhaps you're just another poor soul trapped in this hell, trying to piece together this cursed puzzle. It all started today, or at least for me. The world went insane in an instant. Yesterday, everything was normal. I woke up, went to work, watched a couple of videos before bed. Today, the sky was darkened by creatures that should only exist in horror movies and mythology books. Apparently, everything we once considered fiction has become reality. Creatures of all kinds have started appearing without any apparent reason. Monsters from films, urban legends, cosmic horrors, and beings from nightmares I had only read about in conspiracy forums. The first thing I saw was a massive creature in the distance. It looked like a titan straight out of a Lovecraftian tale, moving between skyscrapers with tentacles that seemed to defy logic itself. People ran in all directions. Chaos erupted in seconds. The news channels were flooded with reports. New York was under attack by a kaiju. Europe was infested with vampires. Mexico burned under the shadow of La Llorona and her spectral children. Social media exploded with videos of supposed sightings of SCPs, demons, and beasts that should only exist in horror stories. But the worst part is that no one knows what to do. Bullets don't work against many of these creatures. Some seem immune to fire, others to physical attacks. However, my mind quickly made the connection. If the monsters were real, then their weaknesses must be real too. I grabbed my notebook and started this journal. If I'm going to survive, I need to document everything I know and everything I discover. This is my survival map. My only chance of not ending up as just another corpse in this world turned into a hunting ground for nightmare creatures. Survival rules. Day 1 update. Research every creature. Not all have the same weaknesses. What worked in a movie might not work in reality, but it's a starting point. Avoid unnecessary contact. Fighting isn't always necessary. Running is always a viable option. Gather supplies. There's no guarantee that the world will keep functioning normally. Look for answers. Why is this happening? Is someone or something behind it? Find allies. If someone else knows about these creatures, I need to find them. I don't know what awaits me tomorrow, but one thing is certain. The world is no longer the same, and I can't afford to be the same person I was before. Day 2. Encounter with the impossible. I can't sleep. Not after what happened. Not after having to face one of those things up close. Before I talk about that, I think it's important to write down a few things about myself. My name is Ian. I'm 27 years old, and I used to live alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. I don't have any siblings, but my parents live in another city, and I haven't been able to contact them since this all started. The same goes for my friends. I spoke to a few of them this morning when everything was going to hell, but after that, the calls stopped going through. I don't know if they're still alive. As for me, I'm a systems engineer. That doesn't sound very useful in a monster apocalypse, but I've always been a horror fanatic. I've spent years watching movies and series, reading creepypastas and conspiracy theories. If anyone has a mental encyclopedia of creatures and their weaknesses, it's probably me. Of course, knowing things in theory is very different from applying them in reality. When this all began, my first instinct was to leave the city. I didn't know how much time I had before things became uncontrollable, but staying in such a densely populated area was suicide. I grabbed the essentials: a backpack with water, some food, a kitchen knife, which I knew would be useless against most creatures, a flashlight, batteries, and my notebook. I needed something to record what I learned. I stepped out of my building, and the first thing I saw was my neighbor's corpse. There was no blood, just his twisted body, frozen in the purest expression of terror I had ever seen. That's when I saw it. A tall, slender figure with a pale, featureless face. A black suit, tentacles emerging from its back. Slender Man. I couldn't believe it. I was paralyzed, my brain unable to process what I was seeing. I knew Slender Man attacks those who stare at him for too long, or those who panic and run. I decided to shut my eyes and stay completely still. I felt the air grow heavier, the presence of something inhuman closing in on me. I counted to 10, prayed even though I've never been religious, and when I opened my eyes again, the figure was gone. I don't know if I was lucky or if the theory about not looking at him really works, but I'm not going to test my luck twice. I kept moving. The city was already a living nightmare. Creatures of all kinds emerged from the shadows. I saw a man dragged into the darkness by something I only caught a glimpse of, something with massive claws and glowing eyes. I passed an abandoned car with its doors wide open and traces of some kind of viscous substance on the driver's seat. Everything was in chaos. My goal now is to get out of the city and find a safe refuge. I need weapons, information, and allies. But most of all, I need to figure out what the hell is happening and if there's a way to undo this. Tomorrow, I'll keep writing. If I survive. Day 3, the hunt for answers. Throughout the night, my mind kept spinning, trying to make sense of what was happening. Why now? Why these creatures? Is this the result of a failed experiment? Or is there something even darker behind it all? There are no clear answers. Only more questions, and a world that no longer makes sense. At dawn, I decided to head into the city center. It wasn't an easy decision, but I thought I might find something, some clue that could help me understand the magnitude of what we're facing. What I found was far worse than I had imagined. At first, the streets seemed empty. However, as I turned a corner, I came across a group of people trapped inside a building. I tried to approach cautiously, but one of them saw me, and their face lit up with a mix of terror and hope. They called out to me, begging for help. I couldn't ignore it. As I got closer, a shadow rose behind the group. It was a creature I had never seen before. Its body was covered in black scales, and its mouth, filled with razor-sharp fangs, hung slightly open as if it were waiting for something. I froze in fear. The people didn't seem to notice what was approaching, but the terror in their eyes already said enough. I acted on instinct. I took my knife and threw it at the monster, but it had no effect. All I achieved was making the creature turn toward me. That's when I remembered something I had read in a forum buried beneath layers of crazy theories. Horror creatures, if not destroyed effectively, tend to come back even stronger. The creature lunged at me. The impact sent me crashing to the ground. But something saved me. The person who had called for help, a man in his 40s, shoved the creature aside and pulled a gun from his jacket. He managed to shoot it in the head. It didn't kill the monster, but it made it back off, at least for a few moments. The man helped me up, and as we moved away from the building, he explained what had happened. He was also a horror fanatic, though of a different kind than me. He had spent years researching mythological creatures, legends, and beings from around the world. He wasn't an expert like I was, but his knowledge of folklore and cryptozoology was impressive. His name was Marcus, and his story was heartbreaking. He had been in contact with a secret group of researchers studying anomalies in reality. Apparently, what was happening wasn't just an invasion of fictional creatures. Based on what he had pieced together, something had shattered the borders between dimensions. A failed experiment, perhaps a rift opened between the multiverse and our world, was allowing these creatures to break through reality and reach us. "This isn't the end of fiction, Ian," he told me as we walked through the ruined streets. "This is the beginning of something much worse. And if we don't stop it now, everything we know and love will disappear." That was enough for me to decide to put my life in his hands, at least for now. I needed answers and allies, and Marcus seemed to have some key information. Throughout the day, we made our way to a lab in the city center, where he believed answers might be stored. The flickering lights of the building, along with the distant sirens, made me think that maybe getting closer wasn't a great idea. But I had no other choice. The answers could be there, and I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. The creatures were getting more aggressive as we moved forward. We encountered several of those strange beings, creatures with forms that defied biology, mixes of animals and humans, and others completely unrecognizable. Fortunately, Marcus had more than just a simple revolver. He carried an energy gun, something he had acquired through his work in advanced cryptology. Though he didn't explain how he had gotten that technology, the difference between it and traditional weapons was obvious. But even with everything, things didn't seem to be getting any better. When we reached the lab, we found the entrance blocked. But that wasn't the only problem. Right at the entrance stood another creature, much larger than the ones before, its eyes reflecting the chaos of the world. Its claws, as long as knives, looked like they could cut through steel, and its breathing was heavy, almost as if it were feeding on our anxiety. Marcus looked at me, breathing heavily. "It's now or never. If we don't get inside, we're done for." I steeled myself. Chaos and despair had taken hold of me. But now there was something else. A reason to keep fighting. If there was even the slightest chance of understanding what was happening and stopping it, I had to take it. With one last glance at the locked doors, I gripped my knife and prepared for the worst. If I survive, I'll keep writing.